As some of us are getting ready to take the ACT very shortly, some of us on Saturday, Mr. Boyd and I thought it would be appropriate to take a moment and talk a bit about a matrix, or what we call matrices. This will most likely pop up on the ACT this weekend, and it's not something we've seen in math, but it's something that can be taught so quickly that it, just briefly, we'll just kind of do a little quick intro. So on the ACT, you may use a calculator on every question. It doesn't mean a calculator will help you on every question, but there's some tricks that we can use to kind of say, well, you can use your calculator to get an idea of, to help you narrow down some answers. So just a quick little introduction. A matrix is just a collection of numbers, very similar to an Excel spreadsheet. We're just not going to see the grid. So an example of a matrix would be something like this. That's a matrix. And this matrix has 6 numbers in it, or 6 elements in it. If we're thinking about some vocabulary, the dimensions of this matrix would be a 2 by 3. How do I know that? Because there are 2 rows and there are 3 columns. So essentially when we talk about a matrix, we say how many are up and down, and then how many numbers are going across. So here's my first row, second row, 2 rows, and I have my 3 columns. Okay. When we talk about naming elements, well, first I should talk about naming the matrix. We use capital letters to name a matrix. So I might say this is matrix M. When we talk about naming the elements, I saw a few questions like this on an ACT practice test. We talk about it by the row and column. So if I said something like element 2, 3, that would mean, and actually that would be a lowercase m, sorry, that would mean the element in the second row, 3rd column. So that would tell us to go down to the second row, go over to the 3rd column, so that element would be 1/2. So element M sub 2, 3 is equal to 1/2. Okay. So that's very brief what a matrix is. It's a collection of numbers. How do we label things? How do we find elements within it? What we're going to do today is we're really going to talk about using the calculator to add, subtract, and multiply matrices. So I'm going to just give a few examples, and we're going to show these on the calculator. So example number 1, let's say I have this matrix here. It doesn't really matter, just use the same matrix from above. That's a 1/2. And I want to add to it this matrix here, what let's say is 4, -8, 12, 0, -9, 5. If I would like to add these matrices together, and again, we'll talk about these in class, but we're just going to briefly today talk about how do you do it on a calculator, because the ACT allows you to use a calculator for everything. So I'm going to start a new document. So I typed in number 1. I'm not going to save that. I'm going to add a calculator page. So if you, I should probably zoom out a little bit so you can see the buttons here. But if I look at this calculator, there's a button to the right of the 9. It's called the templates button. That's what I've called it. And when you click that button and you look right in here, actually these 4 right here, you see these templates with these brackets around them. And I didn't really make a big deal about it, but these brackets up here symbolize that it is a matrix. Okay, so these are my 4 buttons in here. Now, this is a 2 by 2, this is a 1 by 2, this is a 2 by 1, and then this is a 3 by 3, or so it appears. But if we have anything other than these first 3, we're going to hit that last button and we're going to create a matrix. So here we have a matrix that is a 2 by 3. So we're going to change that to a 2 by 3, and we'll oh geez, I know, I keep doing that. And then we'll hit enter, and it spits out a template, and we're just going to type that in. So I'm going to hit 2. I'm going to hit the tab button to move to the next box. then a 1, then a 0. I'm hitting tab to move between the boxes. -3, 4, and then you can do a 1/2 or a 0.5. I'm going to arrow out. I'm going to hit the plus sign, and I'm going to type in the next matrix. I'm going to go back to my templates button, and I just have to hit enter. It is also a 2 by 3, and then I'll hit OK, and I'll type in my next set of numbers. So 4, -8, 12, 0, -9, 5, and then I just have to hit enter. And so here is my resultant matrix, which was just adding the matrices together. And when you notice here, it was like the 2 plus the 4 turns into a 6, the 1 plus the -8 turns into the -7, and these are things we'll talk about, but when we add or subtract matrices, we're just going to add or subtract their corresponding elements. But again, this is something you could answer on an ACT without even knowing that. You can just type the matrices in. Okay, so I'll set this calculator aside, and now I want to talk about your 84s, which a lot of you have 83s and 84s, so that's probably what you're using on the ACT. So we're going to do the same question here. We're just going to do it on a new calculator. So I'm going to hit alpha F2. You see a little F2 beside table set, which is above window. And to be honest, all 4 of these buttons have meaning to them. So we typically do alpha F1 to get our fraction button, or alpha F2 to get our absolute value, or maybe our logarithm. But then when you look at the third one, MTRX, that's matrix. And so now it's saying, tell me how many rows and columns you want. So for us, we have 2 rows. I'm going to arrow down, and I'm hitting enter, by the way, you can't see that. And we have 3 columns, and I'll go down to OK and hit enter. But now it's the same thing. So I'm going to use the arrow keys. And so I'll do 2, 1, 0, and then I'm going to hit the right arrow again, and it takes me down to the next row. -3, 4, and then 0.5. I'm going to arrow out of that, and I'll hit the plus sign, and I need to pull up the next matrix. So alpha F3, but again, if you pick the wrong one, you can just kind of go back and forth between these 4 buttons, and it's already set to be a 2 by 3. So I'll go down and hit OK, and now I'll do the same thing. 4, arrow right, -8, arrow right, 12, arrow right finishes the matrix with a 0, a -9, and a 5. Again, I'm not expecting to see a different answer. It's just, you know, we kind of ran off the screen a little bit, and that's the one difference, and we just find those templates in a different spot. Okay. So that's how we use our calculators to type in matrices. What if we did something like this? So this is going to be example 2. What if I said 3 times this matrix minus 1/2 of this matrix? Okay. So again, no matter which calculator we're using, we need to know the dimensions so that we can get those templates in there. So this matrix here has 3 rows and only 1 column. So it's a 3 by 1. And that, again, that's important information when I go to my calculator. So I'm going to hit my templates button, turn it back on here, hit my templates button. Again, I want to create a matrix. If I go back to this one, it's only a 2 by 1. So I don't want that one. I'll hit delete. So I'm going to go back to that template. So I'm going to go over to that, what looks like a 3 by 3. And I'm going to make this a 3 by 1. And okay, one thing I'm missing though, and we'll go back to that, so I can do 4, tab, -2, tab, 1. I want to go backwards because I want to throw that 3 in front. It said 3 times the matrix. And then I'll do -2 times, and now I can put in my other matrix, which is a 3 by 1. Oh, and it wasn't a 2, it's a 1/2. I'll go back and fix that. I don't know what I was reading. Oh, geez. Sorry. So we'll go back, and instead of -2 times, we'll do 1/2 times. Okay. And so there is our resultant matrix, or there is our answer. Okay. I'm going to do one more because it doesn't kind of go along with adding or scalar multiples. These you could actually do very quickly without a calculator if you wanted to look that up. But I do want to talk about matrix multiplication. And so I'm just going to pick some matrices here, and I'm going to do a 2 by 3. I'll do that same one from above. And I'm going to multiply it by a 3 by 1. And I'll just use this one from above. Not that it matters. Okay. So notice before, when I was adding or subtracting, I used the matrices with the same dimensions. Well, here they don't have the same dimensions. But again, if you allow the calculator to do the work for you, it shouldn't matter. So this first matrix we said is a 2 by 3. And so we'll get that typed in. And I want to multiply that by a 3 by 1. And that's a 4, a -2, and a 1. So what's interesting is that we were able to multiply these two matrices. They had different dimensions, and the resultant matrix had even different dimensions after that. So my answer is 6, -19.5. So again, without going into the how is it working or why is it working, on an ACT, you can use your calculator to add, subtract, multiply, scalar multiply matrices.